wish it wasn't an ocean of blood between the brave Persian people and that horrible regime. I can at least say there's also other open intelligence that illustrates both the US intelligence and Mossad has had a target profile of all the people that have been identified as being involved in that shit. And I'll just leave
Yeah.
it at
Okay. Well, one thing else I want to add, I just heard reports that the Islamic Republic is printing money like crazy right now to be able to pay people for actually keeping everything in order and attacking the Iranian people to stay in power, to pay people, which also shows that they're running out of money. And this is basically a house of cards ready to fall. It also suggests that all of this money printing is going to contribute again more to the fall of the currency, which is going to probably escalate. The revolution is going to speed it up again. People are not going to be I just got an audio message from Iran, inside Iran. Somebody sent me an audio to play on the show. At first he sent it to me, just his report about what happened, and then I asked him, like, can I play this on the show? He says, well, we have nothing else to lose, so just play it. He doesn't care if he gets caught or anything. He says that we have nothing else to do. So imagine if that's the situation we are right now. If the currency falls even more, which everybody expects that it would, there are more people who are going to think in Iran that there's nothing to there's that it's not worth, everything. Every No cost is too much for getting rid of the Islamic Republic because they have not much to live for.
I mean, first of all, just thoughts are with the brave Iranian people. I listened to some people, American think tank type people who've been involved in American policy. They're kind of friendly with the Turkish, but one thing that was really worried me listening to them is this idea. I think Turkey's really worried about the Kurds in Iran getting strong. Apart from other things, apart from maybe an alliance between Israel and Iran, they really don't want this to happen. They want to continue a weak regime in Iran. A lot of the argument for that is that Iran's going to collapse and all fall apart, and it's going to be chaos. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. In particular, the Kurdish ethnicities, whether they support a united Iran, how many of them support a united Iran, how many of them want to separate off. They're also thinking that the American policy might be just to take out the Ayatollah and have someone from the regime come in and keep things together. I mean, I would hope that after all the Iranian people have been through, that's just not possible. But I mean, I don't know whether big powers like the US really care about people. That's more about being ruthless and doing what's best for their own country. Thanks.
All right, really good questions. I do want to encourage more people to raise their hand. Again, the reaction button is at the bottom of your screen. Click on it, and then you raise your hand like this, right? So you could BT will add you to the list. So first of all, I just want to, sorry for being nitpicky. As an Iranian, I do have to say this again. As non-Iranians, I understand the language that you're using, but please understand why we Iranians have to be correcting this line of questioning. So when you're talking about the Kurdish separatists, it's important not to refer to them as Kurds, as the Kurds in Iran, because the vast, vast majority of Iranian Kurds are not separatists; they're patriots, and they are also fighting for Princess of Pahlavi to come back to Iran, and they are united with the rest of Iran, right? So if we're talking about the Kurds getting strong, like Turkey, when you say like Turkey is worried about the Kurds getting strong, no, not the Kurds, the Kurdish separatists, because most Iranian Kurds are united with the rest of Iran, and we want Iranian Kurds getting stronger. They are going to be fighting against the separatists, right? So the Kurdish separatists, their main enemy is patriotic Kurdish Iranians who see themselves as Iranian first and Kurdish second. So Iranian Kurds becoming stronger is an anti-separatist, has an anti-separatist effect, not a pro-separatist effect, right? So when we're talking about the separatists, let's name them as separatists, not just the Kurds. And in fact, the Kurdish people in Iran, they have a lower percentage of separatists among them compared to maybe like among the Turks, they're still a minority, but it's a little bit higher there, like the Azeris, or maybe some in the Baluchistan. So the least, I think the least, I mean, they're more armed, right, compared to the Turks, like the separatists there, but they have even less support compared to separatists, for example, in the northwest areas of Iran, even though they're a minority there as well. I mean, we like, for example, we weren't expecting for people from some people were suggesting that we're not going to see Tabriz to participate in this revolution because this revolution is very patriotic, very nationalistic, very pro Pahlavi, which is something a lot of Iranians are like, oh, Tabriz is not going to join in. But we saw Tabriz rose up and made us proud, and they came out and supported the Shah during this revolution. And one of the most beautiful chants that came out of the Turkish areas was Turkish, Farsi, the Persians and the Turks. We were all united for a free Iran, right? So it was and they were chanting that in Turkish, Iranian Turks, right? Iranian Azeris, which shows that we are all united under our national identity, and we don't care about our ethnic identities right now, right? So what was the Oh, so you're saying Turkey when it is our understanding is that Erdogan and maybe Saudi Arabia and some of these other countries would prefer a weak Iran under the Islamic Republic, even if they don't like the Islamic Republic. Sometimes they seem to prefer a weak Iran under the Islamic Republic rather than a free Iran. So that is true. They do seem to. I mean, now they're changing their tune because a lot of them think a war is inevitable, but they would have preferred not having like a complete regime change. With regards to being worried about chaos, honestly, like I don't. I mean, obviously, every transition is going to be messy to some extent, right? You cannot have a completely smooth, problem-free transition. But I think Iran is going to be able to handle that better than other countries. I mean, like for example, people compare it to Iraq and Lebanon and Syria, but like there is no strong Iraqi identity that unites Iraq together. You know, there is no strong, Syrian identity. Like for example, Kurdish Iraqis, they see themselves as Kurdish more than Iraqi. Like there is not that much of an Iraqi strong patriotic Iraqi identity, especially because these are new countries that have just been made up. Iran has like an ancient culture. They have deep roots in their literature, their poetry, their legends. The roots of Iranian history and culture go so deep that bonds the entire country in such a way that you don't see it in Iraq or Lebanon or Syria or these other countries in the region who have just recently been made up by Western powers, right? And that's very important because it creates a sense of teamwork and unity that makes the transition period a lot less chaotic. I'm not saying that it's going to be completely like without any problems. Obviously, any transition is going to be somewhat messy, but I think we Iranian people are going to be able to handle it. The amount of solidarity among Iranians is now more than ever. And even some of the divisions that we had before, a lot of that is gone because what we used to have as a point of unity was our opposition against the Islamic Republic. We had some divisions over what comes next, but now we don't have that division. We are pretty much the vast majority of us are like basically on the same page regarding what we want to come after the Islamic Republic, which is the return of Pahlavi. So that's going to reduce the chaos. And your last point that you made regarding whether or not the foreign powers, like the West, is going to do stuff and Maduro, like just come and remove Khamenei, just like they did with Maduro, and then whatever system is in place from the Islamic Republic to bring that back into power. I mean, there's always a chance for something like this happening, and we Iranians have to be very fighting very hard for not letting that happen. But I think the chances of this being successful in Iran is much, much, much less than in Venezuela. Like the people in Venezuela really didn't come out for Machado. like the way Iranian people are coming out for Prince Reza Pahlavi, right? So the Iranian people are dying, are giving up their lives just to be able to say his name. Like they are risking their lives, giving up their lives just to be able to come into the streets to just be able to chant out the Pahlavi name. Given the cost, this revolution is not over by the fall of the Islamic Republic. This revolution will, like, the Iranian people have been giving up so much lives, they have sacrificed so much lives, not for the end of the Islamic Republic, but for the sake of Pahlavi returning to Iran. So anything short of that means that they're going to be continuing to fight. Imagine more than, I think more than 50,000 Iranian people being murdered by the regime for the return of Pahlavi, and then you don't get the return of Pahlavi. Do you think the Iranian people are just going to go home and like, okay, like that's it, we're going to accept this? And in fact, like imagine if Khamenei is killed or removed, so Iran, a lot of Iranian people would be more encouraged that we're winning, right? So you're like, oh, Khamenei is killed, and now here we're going to continue with the Islamic Republic. No, we are now so much more encouraged that we're winning, so we're going to go all the way, right? So imagine if Khamenei is killed and United States just backs out and says just is content with something from the Islamic Republic taking the power in hand and just like them backing off. Well, the Iranian people are going to be back into the streets, right? I mean, the Iranian people are already waiting to go back into the streets, even if United States or Israel do not help. So if United States and Israel back off eventually after Khamenei dies and say like, well, this is good enough for us, well, the Iranian people are going to be back in the streets, and there's the IRGC now without Khamenei now has to decide if they're going to surrender to millions of Iranian people continuing their revolution or to continue shooting at them, right? And if they continue shooting at them, because if they don't, then they're going to have to surrender. So if they continue shooting at people, then we're going to be back where we are right now until Pahlavi is back. So this is why I see it very unlikely for world powers to be successful in to just pull off like a Maduro and be like, okay, we remove Khamenei, maybe we could have a version of the Islamic Republic that we are okay with. I don't think that is possible in Iran. Does that answer your question, Jeremy?
Yeah, thanks. Best of luck.
Jeffrey,
Yeah,
will
go
you
ahead.
clarify for me, please, if you have something to add here or if you'd like to be added to the list?
Good afternoon.
With regards to the issue of reconstitution and autocratic reconstitution after the mullah regime is removed, that's always an issue you have to take into account with regards to any endeavor like this. I would contend that's that very issue that, like the very issues that Armin touched on, also underwrite the unique position that His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi has, right, because of his historical connections in the transition period, because it tightens the window regarding any kind of residual elements or exogenous actors taking advantage of the instability and transition to try and reform autocratic control. So Prince Reza Pahlavi, because of the role his father played, and rightly why a lot of Iranians have a lot of buy-in to Prince Pahlavi's family and the role they played during the time of the Shah. I mean, he's uniquely qualified to help manage the transition. I don't think there's anybody else that could do it, actually.
Yeah, not even close.
Gary, sir?
Gary?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we
Okay,
can hear you.
great. First of all, Armin, thanks for everything you said before. I could only shake my head in agreement with everything you said. Everything. And I think that the US has two main missions in Iran. And I think first and foremost is the securing of the nuclear sites. Just being honest, given how things played out southeast of Baghdad in the Iraq War, I had no part in any of those discussions except awareness of the nuclear materials and the need to secure them and the failure to secure them resulted in a lot of hard work over about a 5-year period, because there was essentially nuclear dust that was going back and forth between Ramadi and Al Azizaya. And that repeat of that in Iran is wholly unacceptable to the US government and Department of Energy and to US CENTCOM. So that's first and foremost. By occupying those sites, that would be if somebody were to say, you tell us what you think is going to happen. I would say that there will be, in addition to limited but overwhelming strikes, it will be in an effort to secure every one of the nuclear sites on the central part of the Iranian plateau so that there are US CENTCOM forces there, and then UN, International Atomic Energy Agency personnel can be there to help decommission them. That's first and foremost. But those will then set up islands that can connect Western Iran to Eastern Iran and Northern Iran to Southern Iran so that they can do the work of forming their own government. I think that the United States has no intention of absconding with Ayatollah Khamenei, but instead placing him in internal exile, essentially in a zoo somewhere in either Mashhad, Qom, or Tehran, where he has no contact with the outside world, but he can be interrogated by everybody who comes after him. I think those are missions 1 and 2 for what you're about to see unfold, and that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think for United States, the priority is going to be the uranium that has already been
Yes,
enriched, and I think the priority for Israel is going to be the rocket launchers.
yes.
That's the highest priority for Israel to take at first. However, both of them realize, I hope they realize, that we are going to be back here again if the regime doesn't fall.
The regime is going to fall. I just want to take that off the table. The
Yeah.
regime is going to fall, and it's to the Israelis' benefit. And I have no contacts in Israel to confirm that. But the Israelis, I agree with you 100%, are interested in getting rid of those launchers, whether they're solid rocket or they're liquid fueled. They want to make sure those are not flying toward Israel. But for the U.S., it's securing the nukes and then making sure that nobody obstructs the Iranian people's choices of who's going to lead them.
Right. So I'm going to say this because I want this be recorded for people who might be, because some people don't care about this enough because they think this is an Iranian issue. But I also want to hear Iran, like, I want to make sure Iranians hear this because they need to frame all the arguments that they're making based on the national interest of other countries rather than, oh, come help us, we're suffering. Yeah, well, okay, but the governments of other countries are supposed to be working based on what is in the best interest of their own citizens, right? So the when you're framing your arguments and talking about this wherever you are, it's important that when you're talking about this to sit. I mean, I'm pretty sure their government officials already, and well, not the government officials, maybe their intelligence agencies already understand this. But what you also need to basically really communicate to the citizens of this country is that the Islamic Republic has learned over the past 47 years how to make it more and more difficult to destroy their uranium enrichment facilities, right? And Israel has done a very good job in delaying their ability for the Islamic Republic to become a nuclear power, but they understand that you could only delay this so much. Every time they have delayed it, the Islamic Republic has learned from what Israel is able to do, and it has spread their enrichment uranium in more places inside Iran, and they have dug deeper holes. It's easier for you to learn how to dig deeper holes than for other people to learn how to create bunker busters that go deeper. Even though United States and Israel are very advanced at technology, learning how to just go deeper underground is actually a lot more straightforward. And that's why building enrichment uranium facilities that are really, really deep inside the mountains that at some point you're not going to be able to get rid of is going to be something that the Islamic Republic has. And if the Islamic Republic was a nuclear power, then it's over, it's game over, right? It would means that they will treat as the Islamic Republic like they treat North Korea, meaning that they will not be the Islamic Republic would have a sense of safety and security, that nobody is going to be toppling them anymore, and they would be feel more secure, more safer when it comes to just exporting terrorism all around the world. And imagine what they did to the Iranian people, knowing that this is going to possibly get them a reaction out of the world to come and change, do regime change. But imagine what they would be willing to do to their own people once they think that nobody is going to come and help them out if they were a nuclear power. Like, imagine how much more brutal they would become if they had that level of confidence. So this is why it's completely within the interest of the entire world to get rid of the Islamic Republic, given how insistent they are to become a nuclear power. The world cannot tolerate an Islamic Republic that is a nuclear power. So this is in the best interest of the whole world. One thing else regarding Khamenei and Mirror's hiding, I don't know how true this is, but there's a lot of people from Iran who think that one of his bunkers is right underneath the Imam Reza shrine in Mashhad, thinking that it being a very important religious site for Shia Muslims around the world would potentially make Americans or Israeli think twice before bombing it. So some Iranians think that his hiding area is under the Imam Reza shrine under Mashhad. Gary, you wanted to say something about that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for those of you who've not ever been to Mashhad, Arman, I think you have, but you know the underground rail system that they have there that heads then, west to Sharud and Semnan and then Tehran. There's a very significant catacomb of underground train track. And what has been known is that those have been completely, a la Gaza. Those have been built out even deeper and deeper underground, and that if again if you put a gun to my head and said, here you have to place your bet, not obfuscate, I would agree with you that Mashhad is the most likely place because it gives them the opportunity to escape either to Turkmenistan or into Afghanistan from there relatively easy.
Yeah, and this is completely within their. I mean, it reminds a lot of Israelis of Hamas and how they operate. By the way, like hiding
Yeah.
under places that the world would condemn if they attack. We just, by the way, also yesterday we heard from Iran that a lot of the schools are being closed. So for the IRGC and Basij units, for example, to move into, and they're leaving their bases, like their Basij bases and their IRGC bases, because they think that US is going to bomb them, and they're moving to schools instead because they either think that they're less likely to be bombed, or if they are bombed they could basically tell the whole world that, like, oh look, Americans are bombing schools in Iran. So that's another strategy that they have. Jeffrey wanted to add something to this, right?
I'm going to touch on a lot of the points that were brought up to help tighten the shock group. Given the Mullah regime's pseudo-theologic motives and subsequent inelasticity surrounding their aggression, coupled with the operational impact of revolutionary disruptive technologies that make it easier to sit there and procure things like visual materials. Silex comes to mind, which is a laser-based enrichment that fits in a garage and doesn't have UF6 outgassing. It requires very little electricity. This is all in-class stuff. The world cannot afford to have the Mullah regime continue. Now, the Mullah regime knows that. So the Mullah regime is doing everything it can to buy enough time for them to sprint across what I call the asymmetric deterrence threshold to find its possession of ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. So, understanding all of that, U.S. strikes, all the open intelligence indicators show we're getting ready to do a pretty comprehensive strike on the Mullah regime. And it's not going to be nothing akin. It's going to make, from what I'm looking at, if it with the assets we have in the region, if we pull that trigger, it's going to make the opening bombing campaigns in the U.S.-led military intervention in Iraq look like a very shitty, low-end, like fireworks show. You are going to see shock and awe proper. Donald will have that over very quickly. What are the target sets they probably look at? So they're going to do SEAD, so suppression of enemy air defense, which means integrated air and missile defense, strategic radar, WMD stockpiles, TELs, which are transporter erectile launchers, meaning trucks where you put your missiles on to launch them. The missile cities, kind of set in the open intelligence assessments of where they're located. Areas, regime leadership is definitely going to be in that target set. So as the IRGC and Besiege HQs, which is why the IRGC and Besiege have dispersed all their centers of gravity, right? They're also putting their people in places of civilian and or sociocultural importance with the idea of leveraging a tactical victory, kinetic victory where we drop bombs on targets into a soft power strategic defeat and or liability because they go, oh, look, see, you bombed like a baby milk factory, like what Saddam did when actually he buried the chemical weapon stuff underneath the baby factory. So as far as like Armin's, observations regarding how we have to strike now because, or it's in our interest, both the United States and the world's interest, for any number of different reasons, would take me too long to go through, that we should, eliminate the regime now. When he talked about like the Mullah regime has spent the past 20 plus years strategically dispersing and hardening all of their primary centers of gravity, right? That's leadership bunkers, that's places like Fort Al, Isfahan, Natanz. And this kind of goes back to the red, black, and contemporary red green alliance and the role the radical left has played in facilitating that. So in 2012 at CPAC, I went and had lunch with Frank Gaffney, who is the head of Center for Security Policy, and I'll actually post the redacted email in the discussion board after this, and warned him of the fact that the Mullah regime has hardened its underground structures with a very particular high-end micro-reinforced ultra-high-performance concrete that was in part, in no insignificant manner, developed in conjunction with leftist academicians out of Canada's universities. The excuse used was they, being the Mullah regime, was trying to harden buildings against earthquakes, which is true. You can use that to harden your buildings against earthquakes. That's not what they were doing. So I just wanted to add some of that historical context to underwrite why Armin's saying what he's saying. The convergence of the operational impact of revolutionary technologies coupled with, which makes it easier for actors to procure WMDs, coupled with the Mullah regime's pseudo-theological motivation, subsequent inelasticity regarding their hostility, means that mowing the grass is not sustainable, right? Remember what the Mullah regime said, Armin? He's like, you can't destroy the facilities, but you can't destroy the technology. That's very true there, Mr. Mullah. That's why we kill the assholes that want to get it.
Perfect. They should keep you should make them keep talking because this is actually helpful for us. I don't know why. By the way, if anybody wonders like why are they saying this? Like what is the strategy here? The reason why they have to say this is because if they don't say this, they're going to be toppled by the hardliner base support base they already have, right? So a lot of their activities might like look insane to you if you think like at this time shouldn't you be like shutting up, like why are you inviting war, this is like the end of you. Their understanding, and I think this is correct, like this is a correct analysis by them, is that the only reason why they might have a fighting chance is the few percentage remaining support that they have, right? So you might think that the Iran millions of Iranian people in the streets are a threat to them. You might think America and Israel attacking them are a threat to them, which they are. But the greatest threat to them above all of this is losing the small remaining percentage support that they have. So if they don't come out and say, like, oh my God, we're going to destroy America, we're going to destroy Israel, and basically they cannot defeat us, and all of this BS that they say, if they don't say that, then they're going to lose their small remaining support that they have, and that will actually bring their end even faster than an American and Israeli attack or millions of Iranian people in the streets.
Okay, next we have Jeremy, and then following is Leonard.
And then I saw Gary also, and I saw Daniel and Gary also raise their hand as well.
Hi, and you're asking how to angle things to appeal to other countries to make sure they support. I mean, I would have thought in terms of Israel, it's kind of overwhelming that they want to see the regime go. And also there's an ancient bond, I believe, between Israelis and Persians, Iranians. Then there's a lot of empathy between the two people for the Iranian people's sake that this needs to go. But in terms of the US, to me, look, this might be my own personal conspiracy theory, but I thought the Iraq War, the main purpose of that was to empower the Iranian regime, and so the Iranian regime could go and do the US, well, to work for the US to attack radical Sunni Islamists. And I think I've heard, and it sounds believable to me, that the Obama policy was to. I mean, there's been a long-standing. China is very important to the US, and I think there's a pivot towards China, and the US wants to withdraw its resources from the Middle East. And to do that, it needs someone to do the job for it. Obama's policy was to empower Iran, to have Iran do its job for it in the Middle East, and to diminish Israel to make that possible. And it's only been lately that the US has been looking more to Israel and Turkey to do its job for it in the Middle East so that it can withdraw resources from there. To me, it's logical that if the Islamic regime would go, Iran eventually would get powerful and would be a really good ally, I would have thought, for the US, and also be a counterbalance to things that the IRGC was a counterbalance to. The US wants to compete with China's Belt and Rail project with a pipeline from India to Europe, and it needs to have stability in that area to move its pipeline through. Like that, I think that's why it's betrayed the Kurds in Syria, is because it sees that it can have a friendly, stable regime if Jelani takes over to put its pipeline through. So a big issue is having all the chaos that people are scare tactic saying what's going to happen if you remove the IRGC. There's just going to be chaos and disintegration, and it may not have the stability there to do projects that it wants to do. So, I mean, to me, they're the big things that I'm guessing, I've got no idea, that the US might, people who don't want this to happen would be arguing against.
So I don't agree with that because the Shia empire, a Shia order is worse for United States than a Sunni one, in my opinion. So I think that you're replacing a greater evil with a smaller one if you allow the Islamic Republic to have control over main areas in the Middle East. The Sunni militias and terrorist groups, they don't have a country, they don't have, I mean, they're trying to bring back the caliphate, but they're not able to do that. Among all the more important countries, the Islamic countries, states right now, they have completely given into the Western nation state model. Even if they're not a democracy, they're still somewhat following that model of nation states rather than empires, right? So, for example, among all the countries like Iraq, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Pakistan, they don't have an imperial agenda. They're on a nation state model, right? They're not trying to expand their borders. They're actually benefiting from this new global order that came about after World War II with the backing of the US military. So I know like ISIS and Al Qaeda are trying to bring back a caliphate or something like that. But the leaders of all Sunni Islamic countries, they're pretty much content with taking advantage of the stability of this new world order that is being backed up by the US military because they're benefiting from it. And they don't want to change this model because that would mean that they would be losing their position of power that they have in the Sunni world. If we have these radicals coming out of them, what you get is terrorist activities, which are a problem, but they're not as big of a problem as what we have in Iran with the Islamic Republic, which is basically a governing force with the agenda of world domination and expanding its influence beyond its borders and bringing a Shia imperial, bringing up Shia imperialism, like not a caliphate like the Sunnis want, but an imamate, right? Their goal is to, like, the leaders of Egypt and Saudi Arabia, they're not trying to like capture Tel Aviv or Jerusalem and then eventually Washington DC, but the leaders of the Islamic Republic, they want to do that, right? So trying to fight against Sunni Islamic militias and replacing them with a governing power that actually has oil and gas revenue that is basically trying to eventually one day topple Washington D.C. and add it to its Islamic empire. So to me that seems like idiotic, right? That's a much bigger problem, and the IRGC itself is like a much bigger source of instability. Like even the Sunni instability that you see came about because of the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Like they are the cause of it. They are the main source of all the instability, whether it's Shia or Sunni. Like they are, even though they're Shia and many Sunnis don't see eye to eye with them, they have used the Palestinian cause as a way to create a point of unity, even with the Sunni terrorist groups. I mean, Hamas, for example, is Sunni, but their main backer is the Islamic Republic, which is Shia Muslim. So if you're worried about instability, the IRGC is the main source of instability, whether Shia or Sunni. So it doesn't make sense to see IRGC as a stabilizing force. They're the main destabilizing force in the Middle East and beyond that. Does that make sense, Jeremy?
I'm not quite as optimistic, but I think Gary was shaking his head when I was talking. You might want to say something.
Wait, what do you mean optimistic? I didn't say anything. How would I say was even described as
Agree
optimistic?
at
I'm
all
showing it.
on what you're talking about the IRGC. I just, I mean, there's
What
a
I'm saying is not opinion. What I'm saying is fact. This is not opinions. These are facts. These are established facts.
about the IRGC. Yeah, I'm a bit more concerned, I guess, about what's happening in reaction to possible fall of the IRGC with the Turkish Saudi Pakistan alliance and the way that Saudi seems to be moving away from its no Islamic radical policy to now becoming more allied with
That
the Muslim Brotherhood. I see the
that
Muslim
okay.
Brotherhood as a big problem.
Okay, so first of all, Saudi Arabia, look, that is completely wrong. Okay, so they're not aligning with the Muslim Brotherhood. They're becoming more economically closer with leaders of countries who are more in line with the Muslim Brotherhood. Let's be more accurate about what we're saying, because Saudi Arabia cannot afford supporting radicalism anymore at all. The moves that you're seeing that they're making, they're desperate to diversify their economy from oil and gas, so they're basically economically getting close to whoever does trade with them. That doesn't mean that they're going to be supporting radical like terrorist activities. They're doing everything they possibly can to act like they're moving away from that because they need to. If they even touch that toxic stuff, that is going to drive away capital from Saudi Arabia so fast. And they're basically trying to do a rebranding for their Vision 2030. There's no way that they're going to be touching those types of activities at all. But Gary, you wanted to add to that?
Well, first of all, if I can say, Jeff, you were the kind of person that people told me to stay away from when I was pursuing my career in U.S. Foreign Service and graduate school. I love hearing your stuff, man. But Jeremy, just a couple of points. One is that the era of frozen diplomacy is over, and that Mossad agent known as Yahya Sinwar is the one who made that happen. He actually was a Mossad agent. Europe, before the United States was even a vision in anybody's mind, European diplomacy was such an intricate and annoying construct. It just froze everything until people built a big enough armada to kill everybody that they were debating with. Now, that European diplomacy, that frozen diplomacy concept that ended as the French and the British empires in the Middle East collapsed, that is now a thing of the past. And there is one very humorous thing that just came across the wire within the past 45 minutes to past hour and a half, is that a group of EU MPs announced jointly that they thought that the overthrow of the Iranian regime is probably, they use the word probably, a good idea. Okay, so Jeremy, I have to tell you, the changes that you're seeing right now are massive. They're just cataclysmic. And putting up with EU obstinance is really over with. It's just really over with. The focus now really is on economic coexistence. And You can be like Turkey, and what the Saudis are saying and what Iraqis are intimating and what the Syrian president may be intimating. You can suggest that you'll maintain this radical Islamist threat in the background and bring out your knives and backstab everybody you can get to. But the reality is that from Israel to Azerbaijan and then Kazakhstan to Kashmir and India, there is more than a kernel now of economic coexistence, not brotherly love, not brotherly love, but economic coexistence that Iran will fit beautifully into. Okay. The EU does not see it this way, but they will, is my prediction, eventually. That may be sometime after the Messiah reappears, but they'll get there. The reality is that we're living in a hypersonic world. You can launch something from anywhere you want, whether it's a plane, a commercial jet, or a missile from one part of the globe to the other side, and you can be there in 24 minutes. The reality is that peaceful economic coexistence is sustainable. And when you talked about the pivot to China, the US doesn't have to pivot anymore to China because between Kazakhstan and Kashmir and India, the US CENTCOM can be in India in a matter of 4.5 minutes anytime it wants to. So the pivot to China is already accomplished by what we're accomplishing in Central Asia without people even being aware of it. So we're not going to rely on the Turks or the Saudis to take care of the Middle East. That would be like leaving an arsonist to help put out the fire. That's not going to happen. So I hope that kind of hung together. And Armin, thank you for letting me ramble. And Jeff, keep that coming, man. I love it.
No, Gary, I like to actually let you ramble because it actually adds a lot of value. And
Jeffrey, do you
by the
have a
way,
response to that, or are you looking to be added to the list?
I can add to it if you'd like.
yes,
So Gary's very correct in the sense that the operational impact of global socioeconomic and technological trends has undermined the ability of actors to live in the world and live apart from it. Advancements in transportation technology, which minimize something called the loss of strength, rate, and stopping power of water. Advancements in telecommunications and information technology, which minimize transaction costs regarding information. And up until recently, a ever integrated post-industrial knowledge-based society and increasingly integrated globalized economy. We're delinking. What are the four takeaways? The resource threshold that an actor needs to meet to make significant impact on the world system is increasingly being lowered. The scope of that impact no longer stays local. The amount of time you have between an actor plans a course of action and implements a course of action been reduced. You have no warning time. And the amount of time you have between an actor implements a course of action and the impact of that action reaches its maximum point of impact or apogee has been reduced, so you have no response time. So what does that mean? It means you can no longer wait for threats to present themselves for you to respond to them, because now even a very small actor can obtain what used to be called like a knockout blow, right? The mullah regime, when I did the report, the post-strike report, after President Trump rightly and decisively struck Fordow, Isfahan, and Tunц, and he did that for the reasons I mentioned in the previous, which is, it wasn't just to save Israelis, although it was to do that. It was also to short circuit the chain of escalation so it would also save Iranians. So that's true. He short circuited the chain of escalation when it came to traditional approaches towards weapons proliferation. Tragically, just like that mullah douchebag said, "Oh, you cannot kill the technology." Yeah, it's true there, Mr. Mullah. It's true. The operational impact of revolutionary technologies allows people to reconstitute or obtain that capability much more quickly. That's why we focus on going after the bad guys that want to get it, because the operation impact of those trends that I talked about, along with revolutionary technologies that minimize things like lateral and horizontal proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and the ability to mass produce and or deliver them, means you can't allow bad guys to get the time to get those capabilities. The mullah regime has to go. As far as like economic interdependence, so I think the other guy he was mentioning, and he's not wrong. So he's saying other actors in the region are concerned about insecurity flows if the IRGC and the mullah regime are taken down or toppled, and the overlap between those insecurity flows would have on foreign direct investment, and how that issue is co-opted by, say, ANCAPs or those who stand to make money on ensuring the status quo. Think about douchebags under the previous Obama administration that played a direct role in creating the JCP, that boondoggle, the JCPOA or Iran deal. And then after Obama's second term was busted, many of them busted in violating, say, the Logan's Act by being an unregistered agent of influence for the mullah regime to undermine President Trump's first term's policy of containment and or punishing the mullah regime, disempowering them. Think of John Kerry in 2019 as Exhibit A. So he's not wrong in the sense that that's a concern, and there are those that are very much those actors that have perverse incentive to ensure the status quo exists and aren't exhibiting their every bit of their influence and power to probably undermine the United States taking a decisive military response to the mullah regime's increasingly hostile and inelastic aggression against both our nation, our president, and the region and the world. I'm saying that the operational realities underwritten by those global socioeconomic and technological trends, along with a lot of other things, which I don't want to go into because I'd be taking too much time, is underwriting almost assuredly why even people who are hard realists like Vance saying we have to hit them. Not saying it isn't an
Just
issue that we shouldn't. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just want to add something. Like, whatever short-term chaos that this is going to cause, the toppling of the Islamic Republic, at the end of the day, the long-term results is that an agent of chaos is now losing access to oil and gas money, and the replacing government is going to have access to oil and gas money that is probably going to be spent on a military and an intelligence operation that is going to be neutralizing terrorist groups in the region. So that is the long-term result of all of this. All right. Oh, did Jeffrey wanted to be added to the list, or do you want to respond to this?
Real quick. So add to that also removing the mullah regime, giving the organization operational ties between the mullah regime and Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state and the Chinese Communist Party, and the fact that the mullah regime sells heavy crude to the Chinese Communist Party to underwrite the energy requirements that the Chinese Communist Party is using to recklessly compete, military industrially compete with the United States. Removing the mullah regime is not only going to stabilize the world in the manner that you said, that's very true. It also reduces the relative comprehensive national power between the autocratic bloc and the United States-led Western alliance. In other words, removing the mullah regime also undermines the ability of Putin and Xi to further fund or support their respective acts of belligerency in their own theaters, whether that be Europe
Perfect.
or Southeast Asia.
Yeah, it's bloody obvious,
right.
but it's bloody obvious for a long time. So why is the US only this year decided to go for regime change?
Well, because the Iranian people were not there yet as a force that because the Iranian people have now proven with their level of bravery and determination that there's an alternative to the Islamic Republic. They have demonstrated that. Prince Reza Pahlavi has demonstrated that. The Iranian people have demonstrated that they are united with each other for something. So far up upon this point, it was very clear to everybody that the Iranian people are anti-Islamic Republic, but it hasn't been clear if they are united for something else that is an alternative to Islamic Republic that could stabilize everything. Now that is clear.
Do you think the American administration backs Pahlavi?
I think what they're noticing is that the Iranian people want Pahlavi, and Pahlavi is pro-America and pro-Israel. I don't think they could come out openly say they're for Pahlavi because they don't want to seem like Pahlavi is their puppet. What they're publicly saying is they're going to be supporting whatever the Iranian people decide, and if that is what they support, eventually the Iranian people are going to want Pahlavi back. But so Gary, just quickly say, and because I know other people have been waiting to speak for a very long time. So Gary.
Yes, and thanks. And Jeremy, I think the best way to delegitimize Prince Pahlavi is for President Trump to say this guy is great. Perfect way to delegitimize him.
I think President Trump did the wise thing of saying, when they asked him what he thinks of this Pahlavi, he said like, "Well, I think he's a good guy, but I don't know. With the Iranian people are going to make the decision." I think that was a pretty wise response. That's what he should be responding. And by the way, guys, again, for people who are new here, the way to speak is to click the reaction button at the bottom of the screen, click the hand raise icon, and then BT will add you to the list. So, guys, let's go to Leonard because he's been waiting.
Without Leonard, I'm so happy to call
Leonard.
you.
Hey, hello everyone. Hello, Armin. Thank you for your attention and your time. Just before I ask my question, a small thing to say. I like watching. I wish we wouldn't have to watch it, but I guess I'll stay with I like watching your joint streams with Goldie. It's very important to have this viewable in the English language for everyone to understand. Yes, in the chat. If you're just listening intently, this is the time to cheer. Thank you, Armin. Thank you, Goldie. I think, by the way, that the combination of both of you is very interesting because you complement each other in various ways. You're relentless and Goldie's focused. She's aiming for the PG-13 version, and you're no holds barred type of guy, which I understand. I'm from Israel. Today, I got to take off of my wrist the band that I had since October 23. I think today's date will be remembered, at least in history. To some extent, this is the end of our war that began so much time ago.
Can you tell people why? For
Yes.
people who might not know here,
The final body that has been held captive by Hamas has been returned and identified today. Believe we will get here, but here we are. I have to find a hat to eat. So this is definitely a date to remember. This is 30 days in a row that you and Goldie have been working endlessly. I'm, like I said, I'm happy to watch you stream because a lot of things that were foreign concepts to me are now being brought to the forefront. And that's, as I said, important. With that, I wanted to ask about what we just saw before this discussion group started. There was this propaganda film with the Mexican music drone hype film that they had. So I'm a bit puzzled at what's happening because you see people in the background, they sit there as audience. The person who's on the mic, let's call it, he's covering his face. But a lot of them in the audience, they're like ordinary people. You see them in other marches that they have that are pro the Islamists.
let me quickly tell people who might not know what you're talking about. Leonard is referring to a propaganda video by the Islamic Republic where they were displaying their drones to show how powerful they were. They were very impressed by the loud noises that they were making, and this was shown on state TV by the Islamic Republic, and there were ordinary people within the audience basically clapping and were impressed by the drones. Okay, but go on.
Correct. And you can call me Church. And the thing is that, sure, the actual, the worst of the criminals, right? The ones that are on the list on the website that is being created to track those who were, let's say, like Pahlavi ordered to track those who did the, evil things. The worst of the worst, they are being tracked. But the people who are on the streets protesting, okay, one more example, sorry. When he has his sermon, there are thousands of people listening to it and bowing down, whatever, and praying with him. These people remain Iranian, right? And they remain in Iran. And they were low key for the regime while it benefited them. And let's say we skip a few months or years in the future, things have turned. And now what? They're back to regular lives. And in their hearts, isn't there still this sort of anti whatever, or like pro what the life used to be? So I want to wrap up my non-question so far with an example, and then my question will begin. In Inglorious Bastards, there's this scene where they catch a Nazi criminal and they interrogate him. And they say, "What are you going to do now that the war's over?" And he says, "I'll go home, hug my mom." And they said, "What will you do with your Nazi uniform?" And he says, "I'm going to burn it." And they tell him, "I'm going to give you something that you can't take off." So some people will be living in Iran after this revolution succeeds, and it will succeed. And it's similar to Yemen. People call death to America, death to Israel, death to Jews. But as soon as some regime changes there, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I'm good with life as it is. How do you recognize, or how do you live with
I don't think
and
people are, but the
that's it.
difference between what you saw in that movie and now is that we have phones and internet, and people have left a record. Like all of these people, most of them at least are active on social media, and they have, I mean, like the video that you're referring to, we have all their faces on TV, and their people know them. Everyone who has a history of supporting the Islamic Republic, I don't think they're going to be able to just go back into society to pretend like, oh, okay, now I'm just going to live normal lives anymore. I think a lot of people are going to remember them supporting the regime. And I think they're going to hold them accountable, especially after the mass slaughter that we have seen happening. I hope you understand that these are a small minority of Iran, like not even the vast majority of very religious Iranians support. Like I'm talking about like praying, fasting, Hajj going, chador wearing Iranians who are considered themselves like Quran reading, Nahjul Balagha reading Iranians. Even if you just zoom in on those, the majority of those people are even anti-regime. Like I'm not talking about like average religious people. I'm talking about like uber religious people. Even they, I think many of them are anti the Islamic Republic. I mean, they're still going to have a hard time defending Shia Islam after what we just saw happen in Iran. But I think the main people who have to be worried about their position in society after the fall of the regime are not the Muslims, are people who supported the regime. And I think a lot of them are going to be held accountable. I don't think a lot of them are going to be safe, honestly, based on the amount of anger that we're seeing by Iranian people. I think a lot of Iranian people consider the people who supported the regime, even if they weren't participating in killing people, they have blood on their hands. I don't know how they what's going to happen to them, but I don't think it's going to be back to normal for them. But at least the good thing is that they're a small, small minority of the Iranian population. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
It sort of does. You did speak earlier about these 12-day nationalists, and I think that those are people you're also referring to. Again,
Right.
after everything is said and done, they'll be like, oh, I didn't murder anyone. I didn't kill anyone. I was just there. I just clapped in the audience. They told me to clap at the vacuum cleaner zone. And they'll try to make it a point that I was forced to do that. They told me to pray with Khamenei or I will be executed. I was with all of you brothers, So it's for me.
I
It's
don't
hard
think
to
they could
live.
say that because it's not like that. Like, I mean, we know it's not like that. It's not like, I mean, as cruel as the regime is, they're not going to say, come clap or we'll execute you. These people did have a choice. These people, all of them had a choice, and they chose to support the Islamic Republic.
Thank you for your time. I hope for the best.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Daniel Dome and then Gary and Babak.
Hey, good evening. Did somebody check the news of Israel? No, why not? Why not? They wrote something like, let me just quickly translate it.
Guys, have your questions ready so when we get to you, we get to the point.
Yeah, so it was USA. Iran knows our conditions, and if they call us, we could talk. Now,
So this is
I
from who?
believe
From Trump?
it's from USA. It's not actually like they wrote USA. They didn't refer it directly to Trump. And I believe we are about to start seeing slow Macarena.
Wait, say that again?
I think we are gonna watch the slow Macarena goes.
Yeah. Right. So again, this is a tactic that both United States and the Islamic Republic are using. They both are trying to, like, the Islamic Republic uses negotiation as a way to, in their opinion, trick the United States into thinking that, oh, like there's a chance that we're going to stop enrichment of uranium. The United States also uses the same strategy, like you saw during the 12-Day War. Trump attacked
Yeah,
Fordo.
that's what I wanted
Yep.
to say.
So let me finish the point, because when they say if, the conditions that they have put are things that the Islamic Republic will never agree to. One of the conditions is, for example, for the Islamic Republic to recognize the state of Israel. Okay, that's never gonna happen. Or
I know.
basically stop enrichment of uranium completely, and like this and this. It's an impossible list, right? But at the same time, they need to make sure that there are some people within the Islamic Republic who think there's a chance that the war might not happen, for them to keep working on trying to talk to the Americans to convince them to not attack. This is the understanding that the Islamic Republic does this with the United States as well. They're like, oh, let's negotiate over enrichment of uranium. These are our conditions, trying to trick America to think like there's a chance where the Islamic Republic is not going to go nuclear. And they think that they are successful at tricking America to believe this, and then use the negotiations to buy time. But at the end of the day, United States does the same thing to them, use negotiations to keep the Islamic Republic officials divided. Some reformers might be hopeful that they could talk to America to hold them back. So you need to keep your enemy, you need to make sure that your enemy is still guessing, like it's not 100% certain about what you're going to do. So that's why they need to keep the line of communication open, just to make sure that they're not 100% sure about what you're about to do. And again, what I was saying is during the 12-Day War, the Islamic Republic was negotiating with Trump, thinking that the negotiations means that they're not going to be attacking, while the United States is not going to be attacking while we're in the middle of the negotiations. And the United States, right in the middle of the negotiations, Trump bombed Fordo, Natanz, and the nuclear site in Isfahan.
And
Armin, to
I
that
have,
point, may
mhm.
I ask, isn't that a little predictable? And would you be surprised if there were a midweek attack?
No, I wouldn't be, because maybe because people expect it to be on a weekend, maybe that would mean that they're going to do it not on a weekend. Or maybe because people think that, oh, it's always on a weekend, so they're going to surprise us and make it on a midday attack, then maybe it's going to be on a weekend again, because the people may be not expecting for them to do the same thing again, because that would be too predictable. So the unpredictable thing would be to do the predictable thing, because nobody predicts that you're going to be doing the predictable thing.
I mean, another question is, i- is there a helping outcome of these conversations, like in the matter of the revolution?
Saying, are these
From,
conversations helpful?
yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So that's why we're recording it. So here's what needs to happen. Okay. Right now, we're not just in a military battle. We're also in a battle of narratives. This is information war. This is why the Islamic Republic, this is how we know that this is helpful, because the Islamic Republic wouldn't be investing so much money misinforming non-Iranians about what's happening unless this was important. So the fact that the Islamic Republic is trying so hard to misinform Israelis, Americans, Canadians, Europeans, so this must be, it must be important for people to be aware of what's happening. It must be against the interest of the Islamic Republic for more people to be having a more accurate information about what's going on, or else it wouldn't be making sense for them to be spending on all of this propaganda. So that's how we know this is good to inform people. Does that make sense? You have to be part of the solution. You can Nobody can think, nobody can expect themselves to be the solution. Everybody should be part of the solution, because we're not alone. It's not just us doing this, it's us and thousands of other people. Why is it that people's view of Iranian people and what they stand for has changed? It's not our shows, but it's our shows and many other people doing the same thing, and they all add up together, and together they have an effect. So don't look at what you're doing in isolation. Just be, even if you're a small part of the solution, you contribute your contribution alongside everyone else's contribution. It will make a big difference. I mean, the fact that the Islamic Republic's narrative has failed is because of this and many other people doing the exact same thing. So don't look at it in isolation.
Well, and also had that good feeling this morning. I watched Tusi report, and he was actually talking about stuff we were talking at the night before his report. Like, no, sorry, it was a report like from the night. So basically he was talking about the same stuff we were talking about. So that was like
Also, by the way, like when we talk here, I don't come here just to tell you things. I'm here also learning from you guys, right? And I've been talking on YT News. I've talked on Talk TV. I managed to convince Tommy Robinson that this revolution is not just against the Islamic Republic, it's for Pahlavi. And when I talked to him about that, right after we talked to him about that in our show, he started posting in favor of Pahlavi as well. So that's a big influence. I talked on I-24. I talked on JNS with Emily Schrader. I just talked in Channel 12 of Israel. So, even if our YouTube channel, my YouTube channel might not have that big of a reach, but because of the work you guys do and because of the support that you guys have given me, I managed to go to talk all of these places that has a much bigger audience, right?
oh, and about the 12 news, did you know like
Last point, because
they
we need
had
to go to the
posted,
list after this.
yeah,
You
they
go on.
posted a picture of a girl and that was claiming that she is a Jewish Iranian, and then this girl like sitting in Tel Aviv was posting her video on Instagram like, dude, I'm not in Iran, I'm Israeli, I'm here in Tel Aviv.
No, I didn't see that. But also, by the way, guys, also please don't underestimate your influence. Sohail, who is just an average Iranian in Germany, sent me a link to Ted Cruz, no, not Ted, to Tucker Carlson being translated into Persian and being shown on state TV. So this is just one person. He sent it to me. I sent it to Goldie. Goldie played it, and now that was being tweeted out by Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz was talking about that on Fox News. So imagine Sohail as somebody with no media, not a single YouTube channel, just by doing that, managed to get Ted Cruz speak about how Tucker Carlson is being used as a propaganda inside Iran. See, a small act could actually have a huge influence. Anyway,
Okay,
so
next we
let's move
have
on.
Gary.
Gary.
All right. So I know you want to know which day of the week it's going to be. I can promise you this. Number one, it won't be a day, it'll be a night for obvious reasons. Okay, so that cuts down your window for the attacks by 50% right there. Secondly, it will be a day that ends in the word day. Okay, that will be the day of the attack. For those of you who follow meteorology, I want you to go on your Weather Channel app right now and look at the winds over Iran. So right now in Iran, it is, oh gosh, I can't tell what time. It's pretty close to midnight, I think. So right now over Iran, there are no winds. Zero. There are breezes. So the winds coming off the Caspian are heading north-south from Russia and stopping at the Elbours. The winds over the Persian Gulf are heading southward. There are no winds over that same pathway that Israel took to get into northwestern Iran. There are no winds once you cross over into Iran. Now, I'm not an airline pilot. Okay, I'm not a jet fighter pilot, but I will tell you this: when people ask my opinion of when to do something where you have machines in the air and they're going to drop something that requires non-jostling to do it just right, I would say that right now is the right time. I hope that's helpful. You look at the Islamic calendar, okay, and see, which imam was assassinated or which one, gave birth to a baby daughter or whatever. You don't look at that. You just look, it's nighttime. You look at what's the weather, what are the winds, what's the precipitation. Right now, there ain't no precipitation over East or West Azerbaijan province. There is no wind over Kurdistan province or Elam or Kermanshah. If I were the president of the United States, and I am not, tonight would be the night.
I
Yeah,
want to
never
make sure
mind.
that
Just
put it in the chat,
thank you.
because I don't want to interrupt. Like, because we're recording this, I don't want Gary's thought to be interrupted by something else, right? But Gary, like, what I've heard is that, I don't know if this is true, that it requires a lot more preparation and testing and is that not because we're possibly are entering a higher scale of, like a head-to-head confrontational war? There's going to be some drills. There's going to be some more gathering of information. Some people were suggesting that this is actually going to take a lot longer than a lot of people are anticipating.
In the lead up to Iraq, you needed to get a long lead up time to get troops on the ground, and there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers. This is not going to be hundreds of thousands of soldiers operation. And, being a civilian with no security clearance, in terms of what I'm aware of in terms of U.S. assets, being from anywhere in Kurdish Iraq all the way down to Diego Garcia, the only thing I could ask for right now would be a Diet Coke. I mean, it's really up it's up to the president.
All right, let's go through the list.
I am so far out of my league this time, Armin. Not that I'm not usually, but no, I
Oh,
think we're best served hearing everyone who's speaking so far today, but thank you. So next we have Mr. Babak and then Jeffrey, Richard, and our Nail Bunny Bun.
okay, actually, let me, before Babak speaks, guys, don't be intimidated by Jeffrey and Gary. Go ahead.
Hi, Armin. Nice seeing you again. Sorry if my voice is a little shaky today. I've been crying a lot because the shit coming out of the news and everything, it broke me. It did. My question is actually, and it's directly to you, Armin. I want you to go into this because you are the one with the knowledge of geopolitics. There are countries helping the Iranian regime like China, Russia. I mean, even soldiers put in by Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on. But how does the picture look right now? How bad is it? That's my question.
Wait, can you explain again? I didn't understand the question.
So, the Iranian government is getting a lot of support from Russia,
Are
China,
they?
and so on. That's what I've heard. Russia is
Let me
employing technology weapons to them. China is giving them. I haven't understand if it's weapons or foot soldiers or what.
let's actually get a. I think I actually haven't heard what they have been sending. So let's see what if Jeffrey knows about this. Jeffrey, have the Chinese and the Russians been helping the Islamic Republic right now, other than the jammers and just like strongly worded letters? Are they actually supporting the Islamic Republic from a militarily?
We do know that there was, I think, just a couple of days ago, 16 Chinese Communist Party military cargo aircraft that landed. And that, you game out, okay, what are the things that the mullah regime might want to have, and how big are they, and how much can you put on that plane? And, so you can give guesstimates of what they might have done. If I can give you definitive stuff, if I knew that, I wouldn't say it. And I'm just saying that, is there a possibility? Yes. Can I give you a definitive probability or confidence? No.
So my guess would be if they are helping, they're just selling some equipment that the Islamic Republic might be needing right now, but they're not going to become actively involved. If the maximum that they would be doing is just like,
No, I
oh,
don't think that,
you want to
like
buy
Putin,
these? Yeah.
I don't
Go.
think that Putin's criminalized counterintelligence state of the Chinese Communist Party are going to put military personnel on the ground. But I find that to
Yeah.
be a very low order of probability. I wouldn't put it past them giving them things like TELs or low-end anti-aircraft stuff. The idea would be probably to try and bleed us out of our long-range strike munitions. At least that's what they're thinking. I would contend their thinking is very much incorrect. And I'll just leave it
Yeah,
at that.
you're like it's like you're dying anyways. Let's make money out of you as much as possible before you're gone.
Or like the Chi-Coms are like, wow, they know the United States' strategy to deter them invading Taiwan requires a certain amount of missiles, because there was like a war game that came out and said, okay, it's going to take 5,000 long-range strike munitions, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, well, let's just make the cost of hitting the mullah regime as expensive as it can be with the least amount of stuff. We'll give them shitty Dashuka or like, anti-aircraft machine guns, and hopefully the United States would allocate a $1 million missile. Not going to happen. Like, I promise you, Pete's not going to let that happen.